Well, good morning. It's Tuesday, May 25th, and we are gathered here for morning devotion. And again, coming from N.T. Wright's Hebrews for Everyone. And this passage comes from chapter 6, verses 13 through 20. When God was making his promise to Abraham, you see, he has nobody else greater than himself by whom he can swear. And so he swore by himself with the words, I will most surely bless you and multiply you very greatly. And so in this way, Abraham, after much patience, obtained the promise. People regularly swear by someone greater than themselves, and in all their disputes, the oath confirms the matter and brings it to closure. So when God wanted to show all the more clearly to the heirs of the promise just how unchangeable his will was, he guaranteed it with an oath, so that through two unchangeable things, in which it is impossible that God should tell a lie, those of us who have come from refuge should have solid encouragement to take hold of the hope which lies before us. We have this hope like an anchor, secure, solid, and penetrating into the inner place behind the curtain, where Jesus has gone in ahead of us and in our behalf, having become a high priest forever according to the order of Melchizedek. What's that then? The little boy tugged at my hand and pointed to a large, ugly metal object prominently displayed near the front of the ship, which was gliding by. I took him a little further along the quarry, and we came to another ship, which was tied up altogether. From the same place in the bow, there was a thick metal cable reaching down into the murky waters below. It's the anchor, I said. They drop it when they want to stay still and stop. It sinks down into the mud at the bottom. And even when it's windy and the tide gets high, the ship won't move. When they want to sail again, they haul it up. And there it is on the side. He looked at the ship as it moved away from us, out towards the open sea. Do all ships have one, he asked. I think so, I replied. You'd be in bad shape without it. Actually, in the only place in the New Testament where anchor is mentioned, they were in bad shape, even though they had several. The passage in Acts 27, which tells the story of Paul's voyage, which ended in a shipwreck on Malta. So when Hebrews tell us that Christian hope acts like an anchor, it is, as far as we know, the only time in Christian writing that the idea is used. And it made all the odder when the writer says that this anchor penetrated into the inner place behind the curtain. Anchors belong on the seabed, not behind a curtain. What on earth is he talking about? Well, it isn't actually on earth. It's in heaven. And that's the point. He is working back to explain in the next chapter what it means to speak of Jesus as a high priest according to the order of Melchizedek. Because he's thinking of the high priest, he's thinking of the temple. And because he's thinking of what the high priest does in the temple, his mind goes naturally to the great moment once a year when the high priest goes in behind the curtain into the innermost sanctuary of temple, the Holy of Holies. There, on what they believe is the holiest spot on earth, the place where you were so close as possible to God himself, the high priest would make an atonement for the people. What's he going to say more fully in the passage to come is that Jesus has gone in, not into the earthly temple in Jerusalem, but into the true temple, the world of heaven right into the innermost courts and into the very presence of the loving Father. And he has gone there on our behalf. We are attached to him as though by a great metal cable. He is there in the very presence of God like an anchor. All along, as we don't let go of the cable, we are anchored to the presence of God. All the winds, the tides, the storms that may come can't shift us. There is enormous comfort to be had, precisely at such times, in the knowledge that the anchor is solid and secure. We are not promised that there won't be any storms. Indeed, the provisions of a secure anchor imply that there will be. What we are promised is that we will be kept safe. This is the promise which lies underneath the appeal of the last two sections, the appeal to stand firm and hold on patiently. The rest of our present passage, leading to this climactic statement, explores the way in which Abraham, the classic biblical example of a faithful presence, hung on to God's promise through thick and thin. And it explains in particular why Abraham knew and why we should know that God means what he says, that the promises are as solid and as unbreakable as they could possibly be. When God made the promise, he swore that he would keep them, not by anyone else, but by his own self. This, like an anchor, isn't obvious at first sight. It's difficult to translate the words of the promise in verse 14, and we can't at once see how it is in fact an oath which God swears by his own character. In fact, the words, "I have most assuredly blessed you," are more literally, "if I don't surely bless you." This is the clue. The sentence is part of an implied longer one. It is as though you and I were to say, if I don't keep this promise, may I never be trusted again. And then to miss out the last word simply by saying, if I don't keep out that promise, ... God is saying, if I don't surely bless you, may your name be mud forever. Strong stuff, you may think. And that is exactly the point Hebrews is making. First, God made promises to Abraham. Then he swore an oath that he would indeed keep them. Two unchangeable things, as verse 18 puts it. God didn't lie in either of them. That is why the promise can and must be regarded as firm and secure. That is, in turn, explains what lies beneath the exhortation in the previous passage, to hold on to hope and to persevere in faith. Doing this isn't whistling in the dark. We don't have faith in faith, as people sometimes suggest. Christians' hope isn't optimism, a vague sense that things will probably turn out right. Christian faith is trusting, and going on trusting through thick and thin, in the God who made the unbreakable promises and will certainly keep them. Christian hope is looking ahead to the time when, according to those promises, God will make the world over anew, completing the work he began in Jesus. And it's Jesus on whom the whole thing rests. That's why Christians tell the story of Jesus over and over again, day by day and year by year. Holding on to that story is like making sure that the anchor's cable is firmly attached at one end. But the point of it is that all the anchor itself is secure and solid. The reason the writer of this letter is now going to explore the deeper and stranger truth about Jesus as a high priest is because this will give his readers, ourselves included, all the more encouragement to trust and hope. We shall be needing it. And so, just to summarize this, so he's using the analogy of an anchor, that God made this promise, this covenant with Abraham, that he would be blessed and he would be multiplied. And God stuck to that promise. God was firm in making that promise. He told Abram that he would never break that promise. And Abram took him some time to realize what was going on, and he finally believed through faith all that God had promised. And even to this day, God is still faithful to that promise, that anchor of that promise that God will bless us, that he will be our God if we are his people. That anchor is still firm and true. And so he's using that as a stepping stone, again, to make a point about who Jesus is. Jesus is our anchor. And he uses the idea of a cable. And we are cable to Jesus in some way, in some fashion, that makes that promise true, all that God has given us. That covenant, that promise, that hope that God has in store for us.